So we were just saying you're in LA now, but you don't officially live in LA, but you might eventually move to LA. I mean, how long have you kind of been going back and forth now?
Well, without COVID, since 2020, but obviously COVID knocked that out. Like, let's say
Yeah.
I got a year and a half wasted. So I was back home in South Africa for about a year and a half. But I've been in and out of the country quite a lot.
Like for touring, or did the touring here or like the work here really start kind of right before the pandemic?
Yeah, the work.
Yeah.
Touring and stuff. My first tour was in 2020, and then it got cut short because of COVID, and then I got stuck here for an extra month and a half. That was interesting.
That time, man, nobody knew it was happening, and every country was kind of freaking out at the same time, and borders getting shut.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it must have been crazy for you to not even know when you might be able to go home, right?
Exactly. It went from okay, we've got a flight for you in a week. Make sure you're prepared. And then flight got delayed. Okay, cool. And then it just got delayed indefinitely. Like they were like,
a real long
we
delay.
don't know.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know. And I was like, shit, I don't know. What am I supposed to do now? Yeah, but that was in 2020. But yeah, I've been in and out of the country for, let's say, a good 2 years.
Yeah, man. But that's so crazy because I was looking back at all of your tunes in your discography, like getting ready to talk to you. And I mean, I have tunes of yours that are from, as early as like 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
And I don't think I had realized that there had been that long of a period before you were able to come over to the States and tour and do all that. I mean, that must have felt like an eternity, man. All those years putting out tunes and not being able to really come over to where the scene was like popping off.
Not really. I would say the music was just being made because of, pure joy. But my goals were different back then. I was studying, I was doing my psychology degree at the time, like in 2016, 2017, 2016, 17, 18 to 19 as well. So I was doing my psychology degree at the time. And what happened was I was juggling the music a little bit more and the psychology. I was like, how do I do this? How do I do that? And in that, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to push the music thing too much. And with me not pushing the music thing, my goals were kind of set back a little bit. It wasn't like I was going to be I was like, I want to go to America. I want to be able to tour, because I was focusing on my academics at the time.
Well, that's interesting in the sense of if you were focused on the academics, you were still putting out all this music. You were still prolific around that time. Were you looking at music still as kind of like a side passion at that point? Like, what did you think you were going to be doing?
I was looking at music as a hobby for like the first year. Let's say 2016, music was like a hobby. And then after that, I was like, yo, this can kind of go off a little bit more. And then I started taking a little bit more serious in 2017. That's when I pitched my music to Craze, who runs Slow Roast.
Yeah.
And that was my first official release. And after that, I was like, okay, now Jon Casey is gaining some traction. Let me move this forward. But beforehand, it was a hobby. But in between, back to your question, between when I first got to the States in 2020 and the beginning of like 2016, that little period was me just experimenting. It wasn't like I want to be a touring DJ. I only started DJing late as well, like in 2017.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because my best friend was like, yo, you need to start DJing because you can't be a producer and not a DJ. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to do that. I don't really feel like that right now. And he kept on telling me, he's like, bro, you're sleeping on yourself. Like, you're honestly sleeping on yourself. And then I played my first show. It was a small club in Johannesburg, but it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah. What do you have memories from that show? Does anything stand out?
Oh, you know what? It wasn't Johannesburg. It was Cape Town.
Okay.
And I didn't DJ. I used my Novation, the launch pad with Ableton.
Oh, sure.
So I started doing live stuff first. And that was very fun. The scene still isn't really huge in South Africa, but it was at a club that closed down called Friction, which was like the bass club in Cape Town. And I played my first show there, and that was fun. That was a fun experience. I had like people dancing and stuff, and I was like, ooh, this can work.
That's good, man. I feel like so many people, just get nervous the first time, or walk away with regrets, or whatever it is. It's nice to hear like just a fun first time, that first time excitement.
Yes, exactly. And that was like, ooh, I got bit, but I only started using CDJs, I'm going to say 6 months after that. I don't know if you're familiar with Chi.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, him and I started making music together back in South Africa in 2010. But I DJ'd on CDJs for the first time with him in Johannesburg.
Okay.
We had a little back-to-back action, and he was like, you're going to use CDJs tonight, and I'll show you how to do it. And I was like, ooh, okay. I had used Tractor before, the little Tractor
like similar principles. Yeah.
Similar principles. But it was fun, and I never looked back after that. But back to your point is, I connected those two at some point, like towards the end of 2019. I started, gaining traction. Beginning of 2019, I was gaining traction, and I got a manager. And then the goal to be a touring artist in the United States became a little bit more tangible. Beforehand, it was this sort of floating concept of, oh, okay, cool, I could be an artist or whatever. But the more work came in, the more it was like, okay, it's more in reach. And then I like grabbed it in 2019, and it was beautiful. As soon as I finished my psychology degree, I got my work visa or my travel, my O1 visa.
Yeah.
So it was just beautiful timing.
That's perfect, man. I mean, was there any sort of cognitive dissonance about, like, did you think you were going to use that degree to do something? Was there a choice you had to make between music or, a more academic path?
One push to do the academics was obviously your parents.
Of course.
They're like, just get a degree. And so I was studying partly just to, keep them at bay. But another thing was I was studying psychology because I love psychology. Like, I loved it. I found myself, reading lots of self-help books and psychology books at the bookstore and getting those. And I was like, you know what, let me do psych. So I did about 3.5 years of that. And the beauty about psychology is it's in everything, right? Psychology is this huge umbrella that has subgenres, like abnormal psychology, neuropsychology, behavioral, all that kind of stuff. So it does, let me say this, the way that I apply it in my music is not through how I want to, what's the word? It doesn't come through with how I want to respond or work with other people. It's more so internalized and like me about myself, introspection, the framework I look through the world as, or I look at the world through. So the psychology degree, it did do a lot for me. But if I connected through to the music, I would say it's difficult for me to be like, this is what I learned. Right. And this is how I apply psychology in music. Because I can't give you that. But the way that I am, I would say it affected how I am and how I present myself. And that's what affects the music, especially as being a DJ.
Man, I mean, I think, you tell me if you agree, but I feel like the more we know ourselves and the more we sort of understand why we do the things that we do, or why the things that affect us, that kind of knowledge, I think, only makes us better artists, right? At the end of the
100%.
day, like, the individual aside, but just that self-knowledge, whatever it is. I was just talking to Kill the Noise about this the other day, and about the idea of like, you really got to every once in a while sit yourself down and try to figure out like, why am I doing this? Like, of course we all do it because we like music, but there's so much under that. Once you kind of peel that back, it's like, no, really, like, what are you doing this for? Why are you doing this?
Yes.
And I have to imagine, yeah, like the psychology degree and just being able to sort of look at yourself in that way. I could actually see that being hugely valuable artistically.
Let me chirp in there. I think I don't want to do that yet, right? I'm still kind of early in my career, and I don't want to do the why are you doing this right now?
Sure.
Because it's there will be a time and place for me to do that. Let's say in the next year or two. It's just I'm so busy right now. Like I'm getting hella shows. I'm working on lots of music. Not to say that it would throw me off, but I think I'll come back to that question with a little bit more experience and a little bit more hindsight.
Right.
And then I could be like, yo, why are you actually doing this? Because now, if you would have just asked me that, gun to my head, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
I love making music. I love the energy I have behind the decks, playing shows. I love meeting new people and traveling. But I mean, and I don't say superficial in a bad way, but those are kind of like superficial answers.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
Just touching the surface. So I'd like to, dig deeper at some point and, like, what is that? And that could open up new levels of creativity.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. And that's kind of the exciting part too, right? Is like, that'll always be there. So I think you're right that you don't have to be in a rush to do that. I don't think anyone has to be in a rush to do it if what they're doing right now feels good and feels right. But it's exciting too, because then there's that potential, right? You're like, oh, well,
Absolutely.
if I look behind this door, what's going to happen? What am I going to make after that? Like that kind of potential I find really exciting too.
Exactly. And there's so many doors. And you never know what you're going to walk into. But it's a beautiful thing. And one thing that I find that artists do quite a lot, and maybe it's not my place to say this, but I think it's important to say, is that they identify themselves with their art too much.
Man,
right?
Yeah.
So if their art gets rejected, they get rejected. Or if their art blows the fuck up, they think they're blowing up.
Right.
and that is such an unhealthy way of looking at things.
Or that, like, if they get a bunch of fans and people who say that their art is great, that can make you think that your life is great,
You see these little glasses that they look through, and then you take them off and the world is just like decrepit and dark, and like it's a scary thing. And I think that's important for people not to do. As you said, that introspection and asking yourself those questions, you need to find that within yourself, and the art is just a channel. It's not the life source.
100%, man. I mean, I went through that. I feel like I still go through that to a certain extent, but really in the pandemic, when I think a lot of people who do what we do felt like a big chunk of their life was ripped away. And for me, it was something I knew before, but I realized it more starkly. I was like, oh yeah, like if this isn't who I am, then I'm not sure who I am, I think everybody's really got to figure that out separately, that like what you do and what you love is not necessarily who you are, or at least it's not the whole thing.
Exactly. Yeah. But I would say that there's a give and take there. It's a double-edged sword. Because, for example, if I identify myself with my music in a healthy way, right, then the drive I'll get from that will be insane.
Yeah.
I don't have a plan B, so I'm going to ride this motherfucker till the wheels fall off. So I'm just going to go gung-ho and just work and play. Everything I do is at 110%. So there's the healthy side. The unhealthy side is oh shit, I don't have a plan B. What if people don't like it? The negative things.
Right.
And I think everything is walking a tightrope, really. Like everything is just walking a tightrope, and it's about, don't lean too much into the good and don't lean too much into the bad.
Yep.
Like it's really all about balance.
Well, yeah, that's the thing I think people forget a lot of the time, especially in like the crazy like social media overload we live in these days. The common wisdom is like, yeah, don't read the comments, don't listen to the shit talkers online, the trolls, all of that. But I think that, which is good and right, but I think the opposite of that gets forgotten is like, well, if you're not doing that, you probably also shouldn't be listening too hard to the people telling you how great you are, like you really gotta find the value in it for yourself before anyone else.
Find the value in it for yourself. That's big. I like that. I'm gonna make a mental check.
Great. Yeah, it's cool to have that perspective, because I think what you're saying though is like everything in moderation, right? Like you have to dip into both sides of this debate a little bit. Because like even to have the thought to do this in the first place, you have to be that's like kind of a crazy thought,
It is.
Like to really believe in yourself that much that you're like, no, I can do this. Knowing, well, or maybe you don't know, like the odds of success are so low and how competitive and stressful and all that, like to be like, no, I got this. Like that's still, you have to be a little crazy. And then I think you have to mix that with the more practical side. And a long career, man, you dip in and out of those a million times.
Yeah, 100%. You need to have that edge, for everybody who's really in this music thing. You have to have an edge. You have to believe in yourself, or you have to be crazy enough that none of it matters and you just do it.
Yeah. That's so true, man. Because I'm sure you know those people too. The second you said that, I was like, oh, I know those people. Yeah.
You know those people. Yeah. Exactly. So, but it's just this never ending. Firstly, as with everything, it's all liminal. There's no ceiling. There's no basement. Just finding that good groove, that state of flow, and just riding that for as long as you can. Because it's a very healthy channel of creativity. Music is such a healthy channel of creativity. It's the politics and some of the people and all that stuff around it that gets ugly.
Yeah.
And people get lost. Man, I'm seeing people finding their sense of self in this industry, and that's the last thing you want to do. That's the last thing you want to do.
It's dangerous, man. This is something I talk about all the time. Is that if you enter this industry with any kind of little chinks or chips in your armor, like the industry will get in there and just rip it over. Any kind of, like if you enter with like a small issue, you'll leave with a much bigger one. Like it's almost just a guarantee. And yeah, it's dangerous, man, because you see people kind of just getting lost in the middle of it. And sometimes, with that, it's like the only way out is through. You kind of you can't do much for people in that state. It's like either they figure it out or they don't.
Exactly. And there's only so much that you can do on the outside. But I think I'm grateful that I got into the music industry at the age that I did, officially. Let me say.
Which was what age?
I started touring at 23. I started taking, let's say 2017 was the beginning of everything. And that was still back home. So I had the cushion and the fortitude of being in South Africa. But how old was I in 2017? I was 20.
Okay.
Yeah. So officially started releasing bigger stuff at 20, started touring at 23. And, I grew up in a very healthy family. So I'm always grateful for that. I came into this industry with a bit of a stronger sense of self than most. or than a lot. I
Was
won't
it
say most.
a big family, small family? What was home life?
Five.
Five
Five in
kids?
total.
Okay.
So, oh no, five. Sorry,
Just five
mom,
people.
dad, five people. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
the nuclear family was five people. So
Right.
mom, dad, Kenny, Kevin, and me. I'm the youngest,
Okay.
and my parents really fought tooth and nail to raise us right. You know, parents are also kids. Still, they're kids raising kids.
Yeah.
They did their best, and I appreciate them for that. So, coming into the industry, you know, I don't come from a world of drugs, so I don't do any drugs. I'll get lit every now and again.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's okay for me to, you know, just kind of steer away from. But also just with people, you know, you just really get bad vibes from people sometimes. You're like,
Oh yeah.
stay away. But I'll never disrespect you, you know, overtly or even covertly. I'm not gonna like, yo, stay away from me. I'll give you that respect of you being a human first, and then
Right.
afterwards, I'll be like,
Yeah, that's the way, man. I mean, I think so much of this industry too can feel like a little clicky when you really get into it, and just very small. Like there's actually not that many people once you really dig into it. And so it can get a little high schooly, a little gossipy sometimes, but I'm right there with you, man. Especially, you know, I've been doing this for a while. And at this point, it's like, you can tell right away when somebody has those vibes, or just that you're not going to connect with someone for whatever reason it is.
Yeah.
And at that point, for me, it's exactly what you said. If we're in the same room, we'll have a nice time. Yeah. And then we just won't hang out after that, you know?
Exactly. And it's being able to differentiate those kind of situations and people. And that's not to say, I mean, you get bad people, right? But that's not to say everyone in the music industry is bad, really. It's just some of them are lost. You know, it's not anyone's responsibility to pick up people along the way and help them, but it's nice. It's a nice thing to do. And if you can lend a helping hand where you can, for sure. But if someone is, let's say, quote unquote, past the point of no return, nah, never mind.
Yeah.
But we do all inherently have a responsibility to add value to life, but, you know, on a smaller scale to this industry everywhere we can, you know. And it all starts from the basic manners our parents taught us, you know, say thank you, say please.
Yeah.
Those small things. And some people can be like, oh, it's not that deep, but it kind of is. Like it roots itself in this.
It's insane.
In this place.
It's insane. Even to take it to like a super cutthroat business level, people don't understand that, like, if you just have a reputation of being a nice, chill, easy to work with person, automatically you've beaten out 80% of the people in the running for whatever it is. You know?
Beautiful way of putting it. Beautiful. You can set yourself apart from 80% by just being a good person.
Yeah, it's that
and then
easy.
After that, it's about like the work ethic and the drive that you have or whatever it is that you need to go through. But just be a good person and you can just elevate a little bit more.
Absolutely, man. And not to mention that your life will be better anyway and more enjoyable.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy, man. I agree with you because it sounds simple, but that's it.
It goes a long way. It goes such a long way. And people forget that because of whatever reasons, you know.
I think people just get to, I think especially people who are just starting out and maybe people who are just getting that first taste of success or an opportunity, it's so hard to get that I think people are kind of desperate. And I'm speaking from experience. When I was young, I was absolutely this way, where if you see that little thing, you're just like, oh, this is it. I got to do everything right now. And you kind of lose the forest for the trees and just start being thirsty and bothering people and really just sort of forgetting to be a human being at a certain point. It's easy to do, but once you stop doing it, it's like, oh man, I could never go back there.
Yeah, never. I mean, that kind of reminds me of a little situation that happened to me a few months ago. I'm not going to get too specific, but what happened was it was like a group of DJs that I've respected and looked up to, and one of them, I had a conversation with them beforehand, and it was nice, and they were playing some music from my country, and it was like just a vibe, and there was such a part of me that was screaming like, yo, I need to be in there, right? I need to be in that circle. I need to, because firstly, I'm a DJ from South Africa. I'm touring the States. It was almost like this ugly sense of entitlement.
Right.
Right. And because I had spoken to the guy who was DJing at the time beforehand, I was like, okay, let me just go, greet him on the decks real quick, like say what's up, because I'm from South Africa. Pure intentions.
Yep.
But, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Anyway, I go there and he has like people around him and they're like, yo, what's up? And, I kind of just got a little weird.
Yep.
And then I stepped back and I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like,
yeah.
It wasn't invasive, right? I wasn't like, get on stage, stop him or whatever. It wasn't invasive.
Right.
It wasn't like that at all.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like if I knew you were DJing and I saw you, it's like oh hey, quick greet, you know how it is, and then that's it. That's kind of what I was looking for. But it was so weird, and this is the first time I'm opening up about it. It was just such a weird feeling, and it was a lesson I learned from it. I stepped back and it was an ugly feeling. I didn't like that because it was a bunch of things. It was rejection. It was entitlement. It was this need to feel wanted. And just in that circle, I've never, ever, ever experienced anything like that before. So it was weird for me at the age that I did to experience that in such a public setting around heavy hitters.
Right. Well, I think maybe that's part of it, man, because I'm relating to a lot of what you're saying. And I think when it is the heavy hitters and when it is that group that, for a long time, anyone who's been doing this for a long time, it's like you want to be in the group at a certain point, right? And then, but hearing what you're saying, I think it goes back to what we were talking about before of sort of stepping back and analyzing what we're doing and why we're doing it, right? Because in that moment, that moment is kind of like a disposable moment. It's not like anything would have changed had you actually gone up and said hi, all of that, right? So then it's like, oh, there's something inside of us pushing to do this sort of pointless thing. And like, what is that? And why is that happening, right?
Very, very good point. I haven't ran into anything like that again, and I pray to God I don't. But
even stepping back and stopping yourself, man, that's in the moment, that's super hard to do. I mean, I feel like you're already well on the track for that. Most people would not have that insight while it's happening. You know what I mean?
But there's, and obviously I will take that. Thank you. It's good to have that insight in the moment. But it's also weird because when you have that insight in the moment, you're battling yourself in the moment as well. It's not like you just do it. You're like, what the fuck are you doing while you do this thing? Stop it. And it's like, it's funny. It's weird. And that's what I said. Try not to find yourself in the industry.
Right.
Find parts of yourself in it. Explore. Love the process. Meet people, exchange information, but don't think this is you.
Yeah.
Like this is all there is to Willy. This is all there is to Jon.
Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, it makes me wonder, we were talking about, growing up and family and all that. What kind of a kid were you? Before all of this shit? Like, who were you at the start?
Funny question. I always go back to the story of my dad told me a story when I was a baby. I was like 2 or something in the car and I was sleeping and he turned on music and I like woke up and I asked him like, Daddy, can I dance? And he's like, yeah. And then I like start dancing to the music. So very, very extroverted kid,
I like that you asked for permission though.
I know.
Very polite extrovert.
Very polite. And my mom's best friend always said, when we're in church, I was like, 3 years old, I would like walk up to everyone and just like, ask them to pick me up. They pick me up and then put them down and go to the next person and the next person. So just this really loving glue. My brothers call me the glue of the family. It's like, I just bring everybody together, and not that was my responsibility, but it was something that I brought to the table.
Yeah.
So as a child, finding yourself in high school, same thing, like, am I an introvert? Am I an extrovert? Whatever. Just weird things. So from there, I kind of explored, different avenues. Like I smoked weed for a bit, wasn't my thing. I wasn't a too extroverted kid in high school, like the cool kids and like that. I could connect with the cool kids because, I was extroverted and stuff, but I definitely wasn't, super introverted. So I was always, talking to people, making jokes where I can,
Were you that kind of kid that maybe wasn't a part of any one group, but could kind of bounce back and forth between a bunch of different groups?
Absolutely. I had my main homie or homies, but I was like bouncing in between different groups quite a lot. Just not trying to find myself in that, but like, chilling with them because I want to, make jokes, or chilling with those dudes because I want to rap cipher a little bit or whatever.
Yeah. Like, getting a little bit out of everything, man. I mean,
yes.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty good way to go. And I mean, musically too, I was curious what was going on around you as a kid, like whether there was any musical background in the family or just music in the house, or even just, what music were you hearing growing up? Because I don't have a good sense of like, what was really popping in South Africa at that time.
Yeah. Well, this won't be the conversation to answer that question about what was popping in South Africa, but because my parents had their own music. But I grew up in a house of, my parents went to church quite a lot and then stopped. But apart from that, like Kirk Franklin, in the house, gospel music on a Sunday. Lionel Richie was a staple in my household as a kid. Eric Clapton, Aaron Neville, like lots of those jazz / upbeat pop kind of stuff from the 1980s.
Right. Yeah, interesting.
Lots of that in the house. So I think that's where my ear was being trained subconsciously, like crazy melodies. And back in the 1980s, you had to have a song that would have 3 key changes for it to be a good hit. Now it's like one melody that goes for 5 minutes and it's fine.
That's a good insight, actually, because, as you were naming those people, I was in my mind trying to figure out how that could have influenced your music, because, none of those people, I don't think of those people as particularly experimental. And I think of, a lot of your stuff as being like really pushing boundaries. But then what you just said about, 3 chord changes in a song and all that, in a way, we would look at that as experimental now in a pop song.
Yes, because at the end of it, it's like it's in C and then it goes up to F, like the complete key change of the song goes up to F. So there's something there for sure. But how I bridged, or how the bridge was gapped in between what I grew up on and what I do now, is obviously growing up, lots of hip hop, listen to lots of hip hop.
Was there a lot of local hip hop popping off, or were you getting imports mostly?
It was American hip hop, Lil Wayne was my G.
Yeah.
Lil Wayne was my nigga when I was in primary school and high school. So there's that. T.I., those rappers, definitely bumping those a lot. Snoop Dogg, that whole era. And there was some local things, but I wasn't too much into the local stuff when I was younger. I sort of fell into it more the older I got. But how the bridge was gapped was Well, the gap was bridged, sorry.
Right. Yeah. I was trying to work it out too. And I was like, I don't know which one is right anymore.
How that was happening is that my brother listened to quite, our neighbor introduced us to, do you know who Apparat is?
Oh, man. I know that name, but
Apparat.
yeah, like I can see the name, but no, I don't really know.
Do you know who Moderat is?
Yes.
MOD. Yes. So Apparat is one part of Moderat, and Mode Selector and Apparat made Moderat.
Okay, there we go. Nice.
So our neighbor showed us Apparat, and this is as experimental as you can get. Like, this is beautiful, gorgeous experimental music that kind of fell into my lap through my older brother. And I started listening to that, like Walls. Apparat's album Walls from 2007 is still something I can play from start to finish right now. So that was the very experimental. That was like the end of that spectrum. On the other end, sort of the drum and bass came in, like, you know, Pendulum back in the day, DJ Fresh, Calix and TB, like the jungle, like that kind of stuff.
100%.
That kind of fell into my lap as well. And I think my brother put me onto that a lot. You know, and after that, I sort of crate digged myself, you know, like I was crate digging and I was like, oh, this is cool. My brother showed me Apparat, and then I actually showed him, I think it's a Moderat or Motorad. I showed him Motorad at some point and he was like, what on earth? And then we just kind of gave back to each other. You know, he gave me that, I gave him that, and we just progressed, and it was amazing. And then in high school, just carried on listening to, in grade 8 actually, was when I first heard dubstep.
Okay.
This was in 2010. And it was the Casper and Rusko, that legendary album where they played at Fabric.
Right. The live
Casper and Rusko Fabric live one. Yeah. I heard that and it was just the whoop. Like I was like, what? So me and Chi, we were in the same high school in grade 8, and this dude named Sergio, he showed us this shit in his car, and we were like, what is this? This is insane. We were kind of making halftime before we knew what it was. Like, we were just making hip hop beats with a bit of an electronic.
Okay, so you were already making stuff at this point.
At 2010. In 2010, we started. Yeah, we were making hip hop beats with an electronic accent. And then we started going further and further. And then Lee started making drum and bass, like going deeper and darker. And I stayed lighter. But then he took music a lot more seriously before I did. You know, I was going through the academia route first. He went balls deep into music. And now we've sort of found each other or come back to each other after all those years. And our side project, It Hurts, ITHZ, we started that back in 2015 and it kind of fell off for a bit, but we actually played our first US set at the UNS Festival 3 months ago.
Oh, man. So it's beautiful that you guys have been able to sort of just reconnect and come back after all this time and just be back at it, man. It's such a cool story. I guess for anybody listening or watching who doesn't know, you know, Chi, another amazing producer. I had no idea you guys knew each other from 8th grade. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. It was insane. I was having a conversation with the student about FL Studio because I just got it. And she was very short before puberty, by the way.
Okay.
This puny little man comes through like from the side and he's like, are you talking about FL Studio? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, you make beats? I'm like, yeah. And then I think that weekend he came over to my house and we started making beats together. And since then, like almost every weekend we would go to each other's houses, like crack plugins, just trying new stuff, listening to new music. It was a blossoming of a beautiful friendship through music.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I have to assume too, it must have felt good in the sense of, you know, South Africa in general, not known for bass music. And even on a smaller level, just finding someone, I have to imagine, you know, being interested in this weird music, drum and bass, all that. I can't imagine in high school or middle school, there were many other kids around you into
Absolutely
it.
not. Absolutely not. There was the 3 to 4 people, right? Like in high school.
Yeah.
And this is, I don't mean this in a disrespectful way at all, but a lot of them are like the weirder kids.
Oh, sure.
Right? Like the weirder kids, and they were all to themselves, and they would be bullied a lot. You know, I was never one to bully or hurt or even say harmful things about people. If you did your own thing in your own corner, Gucci, do your thing. But on a personal scale, there wasn't much that would connect me and those people.
Right.
You know, it's only the music. And we could talk about the music, but that's it. With Lee, we came from very similar background, you know, not similar background, but similar taste. You know, we both danced in high school. We used to like, you know, do the whole thing. We actually had a dance crew.
Oh shit.
Together. Hilarious.
You guys got to bring that back, man. If you're doing shows together.
I would spend the rest of my year's pay to see that man dance again. It will never happen. I'm sorry. I've tried.
That's amazing.
Maybe never say never.
Did you perform at
the
dance crew?
We did. Yeah, we performed in front of like school, you know, for like the talent shows and stuff. We were good. We weren't bad. It was like around the time of like, you know, teach me how to Dougie, teach me, and like you're a jerk.
Oh yeah, all the hyphy stuff.
All the hyphy stuff. Skinny jeans, snapbacks.
Oh yeah,
gold vests. Like it was insane. That era will go down in history.
Oh man,
it's insane how it was an American thing, but it crushed like most countries. Like it came through. South Africa, 13,000 miles away. You have kids, millions of kids, like joking, rejecting, that kind of thing. Like the internet just closed that gap.
It's so crazy, man. Yeah, and I wouldn't even be surprised if it had almost a bigger effect in other countries in some ways, because, you know, in the States, it was very much a Bay Area thing. And obviously, like, it had an effect on the whole US, but it wasn't like everyone was doing it, right? It was more just oh, this cool thing is happening over there, and we're going to take some influence from it and fuck with it a little bit. But I feel like it probably got like just packaged and sent overseas a little more.
So it was more of a West Coast thing, right?
It was a West Coast thing. It was very much, I mean, specifically a Bay Area thing. I
can see that now, because I never sort of, before I came here, somebody who's never been to America, you can never, you know, see the lines between things. You know, there's the East Coast, there's the West Coast, there's, you know, New Orleans, like their music influence and
well, and the US is just so fucking big, man. You know, it's
huge. It's huge, bro.
It's unbelievable.
I did not know it was this big. I was like, a flight from New York to LA is 6 hours.
It's crazy.
That is insane. The longest flight we'll take in South Africa is 2.
Right.
Like maybe 2.5. I don't know. But I get you. Like it was packaged in the Bay Area and given to the world. And the world doesn't know what East Coast and West Coast is.
Right.
Like the rest of the world, we know it, but we don't know it. So now it's just everyone in South Africa is just doing this. Everyone awesome. in Paris and those places, it just blew up. So that had a really big influence on my earliest of music career, even if I could even call it that. But it was fun, and it brought me and Lee closer together.
Well, can I pause this for a second? Because you just made me think of a question, which is, do you think, you know, if you have a background in dancing to a certain extent, and even that story of you as like a 3-year-old, you know, asking to dance in the car, that kind of thing, there's a certain, I don't know the best way to frame this question, but it's something I wrote down earlier that I wanted to ask about, where I wanted to talk to you about the idea of your music has this body appeal where, you know, it's like, you move when you hear your music, but then I think also your music has this kind of like producer appeal, this nerd appeal, for lack of a better term. Like I was looking at the Reddit AMA you did a while back, and so many of the questions were producers asking like, how do you make your drums sound like this? How did you make this sound? And it's an interesting thing because I think you managed to sort of split the difference, walk that tightrope a little better than a lot of people who make bass music, and especially experimental bass music. Like there's I get frustrated, and I've talked to so many people about so many talented producers who make music that sounds incredible but has no practical application on the dance floor or in a DJ booth. And as a DJ and as somebody who really, you know, I think so much of music, it's an instinctual pull for me. I'm drawn to body music and things that kind of just hit me internally. I appreciate that about your music. And so hearing you talk about, you know, the dancing background and all of that, I mean, is that something you think about the way your sound has evolved, about how to sort of split between wanting to push the envelope, but also wanting to make music that's accessible to people and that works in a lot of different contexts?
I've circled around back to that. You know, I got lost in the sound design, crazy, trying to impress other producers rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And sorry, I said that with a lot of anger.
Oh no, but it's true, man. I mean, you know, because you've been there. It's a real thing. Yeah,
it's a real rabbit hole, and for me at least, I don't know anybody else's experience. But it was a joy snatcher. It took so much fun out of music because now I'm trying to impress and sound design and go over the top and stuff. I've circled back to that dance aspect as you were talking about, you know, the point of just, am I going to play this on a stage and are people going to be able to enjoy it? I'm not trying to impress producers on stage because I don't even have an actual statistic, but we should look at it. Like 10% of the whole EDM industry and listeners are producers. The rest are just people who love listening to electronic music. And those people, even then, like they're not just sitting there like, well, you get the 1% of the 10% that is like, you know, that's a sample. He used a sample from Splice or blah, 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 blah. Anyway. I don't want those people listening to my music anyway.
Right. Yeah, it's so funny to me, man. People who love to harp on, figure out how somebody made it so they can dismiss it. And it's like, guys, if we look back at the music that formed the genres that we work in, it's extremely simple. And it's all of it, not all, but I mean, a lot of it was straight up sampling. And really like what we would look at now is like primitive chopping and sequencing and all that. And those are the iconic sounds that everything else in our world is based on. So to me, it's an insane thing to just dismiss that kind of stuff. And like you said, most people aren't paying attention to that anyway.
No, they're on a dance floor just trying to shake their booty or something. And I'm really trying to get back to the dance element of music. You know, I've gone through the trial and error of sound design because I do make sample packs as well. And there I'm 100% original, right? Or 99.9% original.
Right.
In the sense of making samples from scratch and that kind of stuff. But in my music, I tried to, incorporate that element of everything needs to be 100% original in my music. Worst decision you can make. I'm sorry. That just takes, it takes away more than it gives, right? Yeah. It's not fun. The joy that I've had in making music. And I'm still working on getting out of that. Like when I use a sample, there's this voice in the back of your head that's like, it's a sample, it's not original. Da, 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 da. If I could have like just take a gun and just shoot that fucking voice. but I take that back because it is a spectrum. You know, right. There is that sense of originality that voice wants. But then there's also on the other end a sense of freedom that you should have in making music. And it's that we'll go back to the common theme of this talk is the tightrope, just walking that and keeping that moving. So, but to answer your question, dance definitely plays a role. And every time someone asks me like, how do you get your drums to swing like that, or getting the groove in that, I tell them like I follow my neck. Like when I'm listening to it, if my neck is like, if it's too stiff, cool. Depending on the vibe of the song. But if I want that swing, like it's like I need to get whiplash kind of thing. So and I just follow my physical cues.
That's beautiful, man. I wish more people would do that, is like pay attention to, maybe this even goes back to what we were saying at the very start of kind of examining the motives of creating stuff and all that. Is like, what does it do to your body? Like how do you feel while you're making it? Instead of like trying to sort of project out how this fits in, like instead of intellectualizing it, like how does it just feel in your body when you're listening to it? I think that kind of feedback is
beautiful way of putting it.
Yeah, I think that kind of feedback is maybe more important now that we're talking about it, like kind of just that gut feeling rather than, is this
less mind.
Yeah, less mind and less, because you can always go back and tweak the little stuff. But yeah, I think especially in those like the first hour or two of writing a song, what I'm not even trying to preach, but just personally something I've been working on is like, focusing entirely on like the feel and the fun and the excitement of it and not worrying about anything else.
That's it. Doesn't matter. We don't have to be these machines churning out number one hits every day.
Yeah.
I and that's kind of how I got back to that realization of I'm not having fun making music. This was like, I don't know, over a year ago. I wasn't moving when I was making music, and I wasn't, I was trying to create this template of what a fire song should be, or not even that. It was just like sound design, get crazy.
Yeah.
And I didn't lose that. I didn't lose the sound design element, and I also didn't lose the joy in there because I was still doing it because I do love music. But I just took a deep breath. It's kind of like, wait, how did we get here? Let me get back to what just making dance music is, because it is, whether you want to argue, people don't like the term EDM, but it's electronic dance music.
Right.
That's what it is.
Right.
And you want to make people dance. Playing lots of shows helps me balance out that element now, because I want to get to playing more Jon Casey stuff in my sets because I love playing music that I love, and they are the biggest songs of mine that I do drop, but I just want to play more stuff and show people more music. So I'd like to just incorporate more dancey Jon Casey stuff. But as I was saying, playing shows gives me that give and take, that breathing element of you're in the crowd, I'm on the stage. I see what you guys like to dance to, and that'll subconsciously, I don't even think consciously, find its way into my music, and that's the best way. We learn, and repetition is the way of changing the subconscious.
Yeah, that instant feedback too is so good, man. Especially because you're on tour right now, right? So you're in front of people every single weekend, testing stuff out. And I mean, there's nothing better than that, man. Just being able to get that feedback week after week, adjust little things in the songs you're working on, the things you're playing out. And you're right that I think it's kind of the only way to get that knowledge, because if you're in front of a crowd and you play something new and it doesn't work, A, you immediately, and B, you kind of know why. Whereas you could sit there working on it in the studio for a solid week and not know exactly why it doesn't feel right yet. The second you play it in front of a crowd, you're like, oh, I know why this doesn't work.
100%. I never looked at it like that. I think I need to be more conscious of that. I need to be more open to that idea, and just the give and take, the feedback, how I can incorporate this, because I'm nervous to test things out in front of a crowd.
I am too sometimes. Don't get me wrong. I'm not doing it all the time, but yeah.
Yeah, of course. But then you have that one that's like, okay, cool, let me try this. I played it and the sub was just awful. I was like, eesh.
Yeah.
And now I know what to go back and clean up. But there's songs I'm working on an EP for Noisia's record label,
Nice.
Vision, and there are songs in there that I'm confident of dropping in front of a bunch of people, and there's still drafts, there's still work in progresses, but those as you said, you never know what will change when you play it in front of a bunch of people.
I wanted to ask as well, you were sort of talking about coming back to really loving making music and coming back to this idea of sort of like simplifying the thought process and all of that, and looking at, again, why you're putting out what you're putting out and where you want your sound to go. Were you thinking about that in last year when you put out the Harsh Reality album? Because I was listening to Harsh Reality again and hearing what sounded like a lot of just, I don't know if I'd say evolution, but it was like a lot of trying some new things, pushing your sound maybe in directions it hadn't gone before. And some of those tunes, I was like, oh, there's a lot of potential here to explore some new avenues. Like there were some that were maybe a little more melodic, some that were maybe a little more poppy, some that were a little harder edged even. But it really seemed like maybe expansion is a better word. Like it just seemed like you pushed out the boundaries of everything you were doing a little bit.
I did have that a little bit more. I kind of wanted a bit more freedom in the album. I was like, okay, I want hard stuff, but I also want some stuff that I want people to know I do like to experiment a little bit. Like the song at the end, Njayam, that means dog in Zulu.
Okay.
That one is a little bit more experimental, right? It's not like a bull drop. Chromium is also another one that's like a cool beat, which I had a lot of fun. I just had a lot of fun making them.
Right.
I had a lot of fun making them. It doesn't matter if I have fun making it and I don't release it, because I can have a lot of fun making this beat and it'll just gather dust. But I want to be able to bridge the gap between having fun and releasing that music. And just to build confidence in that, because I can also I always have fun making music. You're not an artist if you don't stress over it every now and again, though.
Right.
But I do have fun and I do love releasing music. But the quirky, more experimental side, I want to bridge the gap between releasing that and then getting the confidence of being like, okay, people do like it, or people aren't a big fan of that. How can I transform that into something that's a little bit more palatable?
Do you have a vision at all as far as, where you want to take the sound? Or is it more kind of just exploring and pushing some boundaries, seeing the reaction, and then kind of this like iterative process where, each time you sort of evaluate what happened, take a look at it, see what the next step is? Or is there like a grand vision you're pushing towards?
There's not really the grandest of visions, but
there doesn't have to be, by the way. That's not
of course. But I do think I would like to be able to curate different types of, I don't want, like, let's say I release another album, AA by Bauer. That album for me is a masterpiece. I don't listen to it enough, but it's a masterpiece because it's so vast. It's got trap, it's got halftime, it's got hip hop, it's got down tempo stuff. Like it's done so tastefully.
Yeah, and it's very cohesive, tastefully. Like all those different styles, but they fit together.
Exactly. It's so cohesive, and that is such a legendary album. And I would like to work towards that in my own way, of course. But also, I'm figuring it out now.
Yeah.
I'm working on music. And I'll see the next album I do, which I don't know, might be next year or the year after. But now it's just that exploring, but finding that dance element again.
I mean, you're so prolific, man. You just going through your discography, I was like, oh, we're not going to talk about half of this because there's just so many tunes that you've put out in a relatively short amount of time. I mean, how do you know when you want to do an album? I mean, if you're sitting on so much music and you're releasing so much music, Why sometimes an album? Why sometimes an EP? Why sometimes a single?
Mm. Well, my first LP, which both were through Dome of Doom, a label based in LA, and the first one I kind of thought of just a curation, just Jon Casey, fun kind of stuff. There's house on there, there's beats, there's like trap stuff, and that was just kind of like okay, this is a colorful piece of work. Drop it. Harsh Reality was a little bit more mean mug, right? Like, this is going to be an album, but it's going to be clean, it's going to be big, it's going to be strong. And I kind of it fell into my lapping, and I was like, what if I release another album? But that album was just kind of an ode to myself, to be like, I made the cover art myself, I mixed and mastered it myself. Everything is me on that album.
Oh, that's cool, man. I like the cover art a lot.
Thanks. Yeah, I was looking for like a X-ray kind of weird abstract vibe. So I just messed around on Procreate and it found me. But that album was just like a solid piece of work that I was like, I'd like to release this. Doesn't matter the reception it gets or not. Just put it together.
Is it the kind of thing that you have the concept for an album and then you write music for that idea, or thinking, keeping that in your mind? Or is it that you realize you've made some tunes that kind of sit well together?
It was more the second option. There was some that I did finish for the album. But there were songs, it was a curative process for sure. It was like, these would go well together. But I do, as I've said, let's say the next album I do would be something I want to start from ground zero and build it to be this, for lack of a better word, magnum opus,
right,
kind of thing.
Well, I wanted to ask before we start wrapping it up, like, how did you, as we were saying, bridge the gap between being in South Africa, making this music, putting it up online? Was Craze the first person kind of from the scene that really started taking notice and started connecting and building with you?
He was. He actually found my stuff through our side project with Chi. It Hurts. He liked that, and then he liked my stuff, and then I was like, hey, I pitched him 4 songs. And I was like, do you like any of these? He's like, let's make an EP. And I was like, wow, let's go. So how I bridged the gap between South Africa and my career here in the States was that I released music, and then my co-manager now, who was my manager at the time, he was like, let me manage you. And I was like, yeah, for sure. He was in Austin. He had a little bit of experience working with labels, but it was just good to have that middleman in America.
Yeah.
And then he got me Brent when it was still Rogue Agency. And then they moved to Madison House, and I moved with Brent to Madison House. And that's when we started, getting some traction.
Yeah. Brent's great, by the way. I go way back with Brent.
Oh, is it? Lovely. Yeah. Yeah, he's an amazing
dude.
So yeah, it kind of just came together through that, having somebody bridge the gap or be the middleman in the States. It was through releasing music and getting that traction and then playing shows. COVID happened, kind of shook everything down a bit. And then afterwards, my manager now, Anthony, he flew me out in November last year just to come through, lay out the land, network with people. We did get some shows, but I came for a month and I went back, and then I've been here since February. I mean, I did go back to South Africa for 2 weeks to handle some family stuff, but I've been here since like February, and I'm going to go back for some more family stuff for about 2 weeks. But other than that, I'm here until November, and then I'm going to plan on moving here next year.
Man, that's big, man. I mean, was there any kind of element of maybe culture shock or just something that surprised you about the perception of being in America and touring and being a musician in America versus the reality of it?
I will say, coming from South Africa, it's a very hospitable country. Everyone looks you in the eyes, they greet, we talk, we say hello, goodbye, that kind of stuff. In America, it's a little colder.
Yeah.
And it's very every man for himself, right? And that has its pros and cons, but it was just difficult adjusting to that. that every man for himself. I do, radiate towards the people that I like. And I do have a really good, quote unquote, family in America.
Yeah.
I have a really good set of people that I can rely on. And I'm super grateful for that. But it's just about adjusting to that every man for himself thing. But I don't feel the brunt of that really because, I have my support and I'm on the road so much. I'm meeting people and it's more so about the artists you meet along the way.
Yeah.
That's just kind of the stuff I would not say be wary of, but that could bring issues, because I'm not really with lots of people. It's in front, greet fans, and it's like green room all the time with artists. And then some, you're not going to get along with everybody. But as I've said, as you said, just be a nice person. You can set yourself apart from like the rest of the 80%. And that's what I always do. I give you the decency and the respect of being an individual. And that's that. Just take it from there.
I mean, yeah, man, this whole conversation, you, I think, have a pretty good head on your shoulders to deal with this kind of business. Do you attribute that to anything? Have you always been that way, kind of even tempered? And, how do you deal with the anxieties of this business, all the crazy people who are in this business, all of that? Is there anything you ascribe to sort of staying calm and happy throughout all of it?
I think as with every single individual, it's nature versus nurture, I do think there is an innate sense of cool, calm, and collectedness in me, but also I grew up in a family that my father, one of my biggest inspiration, strong mentor, and he, same thing, very cool, calm, and collected, strong head on his shoulders. And he always tried to extend that and provide his information and knowledge where he could. But more so, apart from that, I think as I started to become my own individual, I started to look at, oh, damn, that's how dad does it. Or I really respect this man. I mean, he started a multi-million-dollar company in our backyard by himself.
Wow. What did he do? What kind of company?
It's called Noisia Supply Chain Holdings. So they do locomotion and like transportation of big minerals in South Africa.
Oh, interesting.
So I watched this man come up, like I watched it, literally growing up from a 6-year-old to me being a 25-year-old now. And I just watched this and it was just so beautiful to see. When we talk, we don't talk about, like, you should do this in life, John. You should, it's not as upfront as that. It's more like the philosophical questions. And I see how he thinks and I pick that up and he sees how I think and he picks things up. But it was like watching it like, oh, wow. So I attribute a lot of that to him. I attribute a lot of it to my mother. She was such a selfless person. And they were a perfect match, strong head on his shoulders, big corporate man who has a soft heart and a selfless, almost ethereal woman on his side, just like floating and, them just working back and forth between that. And my parents definitely gave me that, and sort of navigating the anxieties of it all, which there are a lot of. I try not to identify myself with those emotions and feelings. I just understand that I am experiencing them and I am not them. And it can get tough. Like I've been in some very dark and ugly places, but we've made it out and it's only fuel to keep me going,
And yeah, I mean, what you said about separating you from your thoughts is, I mean, that's a pretty advanced kind of therapy idea, and it's something I've been thinking about a lot the last few years for sure. I mean, it's weird, right? Because we have all these thoughts and then the idea that you are not your thoughts. And then, if you dig into that more, it's like, well, then who's having the thoughts and, and who is observing the thoughts in your brain?
True. But the quick caveat on that, or quick comment, I think I read a book called Dealing or Overcoming Unwanted Intrusive Thoughts. And it explains beautifully how your mind is this constant stream of consciousness, right? And it will be filled up with ugly funny, sad, happy things, because we are taking in information at, I don't even know, like 1,000,000 terabytes per second type beat. We're taking all this information in, and things are going to stick, things are going to not stick. And the thoughts and stuff that you have are just that, the thoughts. It's kind of like debris from a ship that's in this ocean that just falls off. And if you take that, if you look at that debris and you focus on it, then you are that debris. But if you step back and you realize it's this constant flow of consciousness, the stream of consciousness, then you can understand, okay, I am a vessel of this, and I am experiencing these things that are just floating by. And that helps me to navigate lots of personal issues and things in the music industry.
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, that's a really beautiful way to say it. Did your parents, then or now, do they get what you're doing? How did they feel about the path you went down?
They saw it as a hobby until I started making money from it.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, his little music thing, but not in a disrespectful way. Always, our parents have, our best interests at heart, hopefully. And they were like, oh, he's doing his music thing. And when I started to make money, my dad was like, do your thing, bro. Yeah. Run with it. And I was like, shout out. Thank you, Pops. Yeah, I think I got really independent from the family after my first US tour. My dad saw a change. He saw a big change in me. And I just try to keep making him proud. And I try to keep making my mom proud, and just doing things that they would call commendable and respectable, and not get lost in the sauce.
Having that kind of example from a young age, just subconsciously even, I think is so valuable. And it's really nice to hear you talk about it, man. I mean, this whole conversation, this is great, man. I could talk to you for forever, but I'm not going to take up your whole day. Is there anything else we haven't talked about that's on your mind? Anything else you want to get out there and let people know before we wrap it up?
No, nothing. We covered a lot of great topics and philosophical stuff, but I'm on tour. I'm in the US. Check Jon Casey Beats on Instagram. See where I'm at. If you want to come see me, I'm going to be all over the States for the rest of the year.
Yeah, you're doing a lot of dates, right?
Yeah, quite a lot.
Yeah, that's great, man. And yeah, well, once this actually, gets posted up, we'll link it up and tell people where to find it, all that. The last question, I asked this at the end of each one of these interviews, just looking for a memory from your life, a moment from your life. It could be from any time when you were a kid, 5 minutes ago, whenever, when in that memory, in that moment, music really hit you hard, really had like a deep impact on you in that moment. And that's meant to be a very broad question. There's no wrong answer.
Funny, the first thing that comes to mind, there was a lot, but one that sticks was I was listening to Imogen Heap, Hide and Seek.
Oh yeah.
As in grade 4. And I was just at school sobbing my eyes out. I was on the other side of the field. It was cold. I was by myself. I just put it in. And it was kind of the self-inflicted sadness, you can change the song and change your day. But I'm this kid and I'm just listening to Hide and Seek by Imogen Heap. And it's hitting me left, right, and center. I'm just crying.
Oh man.
And that was a deep rooted moment.
Well, I love that you said self-inflicted sadness, and the idea that, because that's so true. And I think everybody can relate to that, is sometimes you're like, if you listen to a certain song, it's going to make you feel a certain way. And sometimes you want that, sometimes it's like, let's lean into this, even in 4th grade, maybe you're not conscious of that, but man, I relate to that strongly, of just being like, oh no, I want to, whatever this feeling I'm kind of edging on right now, I just want to break it open.
Dive into it. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and that's a beautiful thing. I don't know about for you. For me, music is one of the very few things that allows me to do that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It is a universal language that we continue to contribute towards.
Man, if we're lucky, right? I mean, that's like that. Yeah, I've been talking to a lot of people about that. Is like the real gift and the real gratitude I have about doing this in any form is just that you get to contribute to that, right? Something that made you feel that way, something made you feel so strongly, and still does, that we're able in any way to contribute to that.
Mm.
That's the coolest part to me, man.
100%. It's a blessing. We're living the dream, literally. It's such a blessing, and I never fail to confess that to myself every night before I go to bed. Among the nonsense, catching yourself at a airport and your flight gets delayed, and I just constantly, my mantra is, you're living the dream, you're living the dream, you're living the dream. That's it.
Well, this has been great, man. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for taking the time.
Me too. Thank you for having me. For real, I really appreciate it. It was a healthy and light conversation. I like it.
Yeah, me too, man. No, and hopefully we run into each other somewhere out there on the road, man.
Yeah, I feel it'll happen.
Yeah, just a matter of time. All right, man. Well, I'll let you get out of here. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too, man. Have a great day and stay blessed, do your best, and forget the rest.
Amen, man. All right. I'll talk to you soon, dude. Take care.
Peace, brother.
Peace.
Peace.